Hello, everyone. This is Diane Rasmussen with UK Column. I'm really happy to be here today in Northumbria, in the far north of England, with my friend and fellow Stand in the Park colleague, Tim Coulter. It's nice to be here today with you, Tim. And I'd like to also note that we are being supported and filmed today by the Rumble channel called We the People Northeast, which has done work with UK Column previously. And I would like to suggest that you check out the channel. We're really thankful to them for their support today. And Tim, thank you for having me here to your beautiful home up here in the far north of England. I know we've talked previously. I had you on a short interview previously on UK Column when I first met you. Just some of the basic details that you were doing for work at the time through the pandemic. It was really great to hear just a few minutes of it, but I'm glad that we have more time today with this beautiful setting as well to be talking with you on some more details about your life and kind of what you've done in your career and since 2020 as well. So maybe if we could start a little bit by talking about kind of your background, a little bit about your life and kind of what led you to this place where you are right now.
Well, thank you, Diane. Yes, you're most welcome here to my garden.
Thank you.
And my lovely house here, which I built back in the early 2000s and so on. And you see the green roof and the cedars and sempervivums and so on in the view in the background. This is slightly funny to begin with, because part of my background, many generations ago, my great-great-grandfather was called Benjamin Dewhurst, and he developed some pills, and this is the funny bit, he developed pills in Huddersfield called Dewhurst pills for foul and windy stomachs. Now
very descriptive.
And he sold these. Now this was a synthesis of probably the first pill to use chamomile to synthesize it into a pill, and he sold those. And then came along a wizard of a marketing man, and that's rather important as to we see to this day. The wizard of the marketing man was called Beecham, and he bought the formula, and the pills were called Beecham's pills, and that obviously helped found the Beecham Empire, which went on, and people still remember Beecham's pills, and they went on to Beecham's powders, and then the firm got amalgamated or bought out, I'm not quite sure which one, became SmithKline Beecham, then SmithKline, then GlaxoSmithKline, and now Glaxo. So in my background, I've got this interest in chemistry and also the development of pharmaceuticals. But this was pharmaceuticals with a natural product, rather like aspirin, salicylic acid, and this development obviously went on. But now the pharmaceutical industry has rather turned into a monster.
Yeah.
And this is a great pity because those good beginnings of these Wesleyan Methodists in the North Country have been, in a way, to some degree, subverted by the use of money.
Right. And now we see it's gone completely the very dark direction with it all being entirely profit-driven, and the things that have happened for the past decades in particular, and the whole pharmaceutical industrial complex has just got completely out of control, which we're going to get into a little bit today with the COVID jabs. It's really interesting to hear that it came from such a background with such a positive place, and to see where it's come to is actually quite disturbing to me. But it's interesting to hear about that. And you were married to a doctor, weren't you?
I was married to a medical doctor.
Yeah.
And my father-in-law was a cardiologist. He was the head of the cardiology department at the General Hospital. And his department has moved to the Freeman Hospital. This is all in Newcastle. And he was a very dedicated cardiologist and mountaineer. And he'd been an officer in India and Burma during the Second World War, where he'd treated the troops, obviously the RAF number 17 Squadron. He was medical officer there. So he had a long and very interesting career as a cardiologist. Quite what he would have made of what's going on now,
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
So that was quite interesting. So yes, I was married to a doctor. I had a lot of interest in medical things. We attended courses together, and I designed doctor's surgeries. I worked on ancient monuments. This is all as an architect because I qualified at the Newcastle School of Architecture way back when, spending the 7 years to qualify. I went to Sweden in my year out, which is something we'll go on to and talk about because that's been very, very interesting for me in what's happened in Sweden. But for my father-in-law, he got mini strokes when he was older in retirement, and I took over his business, and he'd unfortunately become a name at Lloyd's of London. He was a clubbable man and thought this was a good thing to do. And he had one profitable year underwriting at Lloyd's as a name, and then things went completely haywire for him, and basically I had to take over after he'd had his mini strokes, I had to take over the business of trying to stop him going bankrupt. And so I joined an organisation which was called the Gouda Walker Action Group, and we sued the Gouda Walker syndicates and won in the High Court in what was called a class action. There were about 2,020 of us, and I was his power of attorney in this action. And we won a huge amount of money, which we never really saw, 2.4 billion billion pounds, so a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
But as someone's pointed out, when you divide it by 2020, it's not so much money.
It sounds impressive.
Sounds impressive anyway. And it wasn't impressive to me because there I was trying to earn a crust in the northeast, which is quite a difficult place for an architect to work in. And I was dealing with these fabulous sums of money, which my father-in-law was potentially losing. So a lot of these losses were in the field of asbestos. He ended up with 24 what they call open years at Lloyd's of London, and I was dealing with that for many years. So the High Court action brought some of that to an end, but he still only came out of Lloyd's of London. He always had to put down a certain amount of money, £100,000, to go into Lloyd's of London. I brought him out after he'd paid a lot of losses with about £40,000 as a result of the action. So the interest of the question of the asbestos is that it's something, a material I dealt with early in my career. My dad had introduced me to a rep at Turner & Newall, one of the big asbestos companies in the UK. My dad was a very respected architect in London who did a lot of big jobs, and he was also an army engineer during the Second World War, served from 35 through to 52, and was quite highly decorated. But anyway, going on from there, the asbestos question was really serious because they'd actually known, the lady factory inspectors had identified that it was a dangerous material. But when did this occur? I mean, just take a guess when they realised it was so dangerous.
Would it have been in the 50s, maybe? Am I completely wrong?
Completely wrong. It was,
okay.
It was in the First World War, when
wow,
all the men were sent away to the front. I mean, my own great uncles and my grandfather were all there at the front. And the women were running the munitions factories, essentially, and they had lady factory inspectors. And they identified that in 1916. So in 1985 or 86, it was actually banned. I wasn't allowed to write on my drawings, use asbestos board and saw it up. And there was all the white and the blue asbestos, all these lethal things. So it took all that time for this commercial interest from 16 or 17 right away. So that's 70 years for this to get banned. So this is one of my fears with the mRNA technology, that there's such a financial pressure on it, much, much more than with the asbestos, I might say. But many people have lost their lives to asbestosis, mesothelioma, a result, and it comes on 20 years afterwards. And this is my fear again, and why I've been alerted to the dangers of mRNA, because not testing this sort of product properly over, say, 10 to 15 years. I mean, asbestos, we see 20 years, you can get these problems arising on often longer time scale. So that's a very important thing in my background, and one of the reasons why I've been so concerned. Now, very few people have gone through the trauma of dealing with these financial matters as I have. So it's been very interesting, but very horrible.
Yeah, no, it's good to get that background from you, just to kind of see how you've come on to the things that these concerns about science and medicine and research. And I think that's kind of something that I want to go on to, because you and I both have come into research from very different angles. Of course, I had 20 something years in academia, pushed out for wanting real science and actually speaking truth. And so that pushed me out of my academic career as a full professor, as you know. And what I've seen happen just from my own perspective, especially these last few years, as the globalist agenda has come in, they've kind of pushed the things that the UN, the World Economic Forum, and UNESCO and all of the globalist organizations want. And as I've discussed in previous coverage with Professor Gloria Moss and some of our other interviews, who was also pushed out as an academic, that anything that doesn't support a financial agenda or globalist agenda, whatever it is, they don't want us to be doing it. And so science has actually become corrupted as a result, because anything that we find, whether it's the questions we're asking or the results that we have, if they don't line up with whatever it is that whoever these elites are that are pushing it, they don't want it to happen. And so we're seeing manipulated research results. We're seeing things that, you have to make the funder happy. And so if you did a clinical trial on something and it didn't turn out well, but then, Glaxo's funded it, and they want their results, right? So this is what's happening, not just in medicine, but throughout research and academia and science. And so I guess I would like to maybe hear some of the things that you've found about it, because we all remember in 2021 and the very end of 2020, all of this safe and effective messaging over and over again, which a lot of people at the time, UK Column, I have to say, was at the front of one of the organizations that was trying to get the message out at the time. And a lot of people were tuning into that. But a lot of people, obviously, as we've seen, the millions of people around the world that went ahead and took these experimental injections have now been suffering serious damage, may have lost their lives. Families have split up over arguments about whether or not they should have happened. We've seen a lot of things happen. So I'd like to hear from you, because I know you've done a lot of research around what this means for science and for the mRNA in particular. So I think I'd like to hear from you some of the work that you've done, because I know you've done quite a bit.
Yes, I've done an enormous amount of work, and it's almost quite difficult to filter it all down with so much work.
Yeah.
But I did, really, I made some notes here. And in 2000, I was looking at the modelling from Professor Ferguson, Neil Ferguson from Imperial College.
We all know Professor Neil Ferguson.
who my youngest brother recommended me to, and he's a very clever brother and so on, and I love him dearly. Luckily, I haven't fallen out with my brothers over these issues, although we've taken very different views.
Good, that's good.
Which is very good, and so on. We continue to meet and have a good time together.
Yeah.
So that's very good. And it's lovely to see all the nephews coming on and so on, and nieces, and that's very good. So, I'm an ordinary bloke from the northeast in a way, but I've obviously got specialized skill as an architect, and I've been used to solving problems. Now, when solving problems, you've got to analyze the problem, and then you've got to come up with a synthesis. And in a way, I feel my training in architecture it's not so much rote learning that the poor old doctors, that they learn their medicine by rote learning in a way. There's so much stuff they have to take in that in a way they're in a bit of a bind in that their critical thinking abilities have been put aside, and then of course they've been coerced by the system. So in 2020 I was looking at that modelling from Professor Ferguson. I thought it was crazy because for a start it was assuming that everyone was going to get the disease at one time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously one's interested in real world data, and the real world data shows that people got the disease over time. Virtually everyone has had the disease now, whether you've been jabbed or not, so-called vaccinated. And the result of that is that people got it over time. I didn't get the disease immediately at all. In fact, I went nearly 2 years into it without getting it at all, and I was going around taking my time, going into shops and so on. Eventually I got ill going through Edinburgh Airport of all places. But
See, I never got anything. This is the thing, right? I never had anything. I never put anything into my arm. I'm fine. And so this narrative that we were getting pushed around the time from the pharmaceutical companies saying, if you don't do this, you're going to die. And there are still a lot of people who believe that.
well, yes, that's obviously the encouragement of that sort of thinking was very peculiar indeed. And I don't know, other than the globalist agenda, which you talk about,
Yeah.
why would you do that? Why, we had, all of our countries had a perfectly good pandemic preparedness plans. And the question is, why did suddenly 180 countries all around the world go in and take up this crazy plan? Of course, that's where my trips to Sweden were so interesting, because for some reason or another, which even to this day I don't quite understand, Sweden didn't go down that line. I think their chief medical officer, was it Anders Tegnell? He was very much in charge, and people were believing what he said. So I went there early on. In fact, I've been there every year for the last 29 years. And early on in the pandemic, the so-called pandemic as well, I might say,
Yes.
he kept the schools open. People didn't wear masks. So, for instance, I flew to Kastrup Airport in Copenhagen via Amsterdam, and I came out of the airport, got on the train, and we were forced to go with masks, to put them on to go through the airport, and got on the train across the Öresundsbron, and halfway across everyone took off their masks. So it was kind of hilarious, and I virtually didn't see another mask. I went to a place called Karlskrona, and I didn't virtually see another mask till I came back through Kastrup.
It was all theater. It really was. It was all theater.
So this
Yeah.
this is pretty hilarious, and I asked my friends who are in a sort of medical type business in the first year, 2020, do you know of any people locally that have died of COVID? No, we don't know of anyone.
No.
So that was rather strange. Now then, I heard that Somalis were dying up in Stockholm. They've obviously got darker skins. They don't produce so much vitamin D. And that's interesting because at that time, a book came out from Professor Anderson and David Grimes, who's been interviewed, both have been interviewed by Dr. John Campbell. And they produced this little booklet, which I was looking for before the interview today, and I couldn't find it. But I mean, that clearly laid out that if you had a fairly good vitamin D3 level, it takes a while to build it up, say a couple of weeks and so on, that you would only get much more mild COVID than if you didn't have a good vitamin D3 level. So this was already published at the beginning, before we were ever injected with anything. So, I thought that was quite interesting science.
Well, I think vitamin D is a good idea for everyone living in this country in the sort of places where we have dark winters and not a lot of sun, such as in the UK or anywhere in the north, because we just don't get enough of it year round. And there's not enough chances for us, at least up here in the north of England or Scotland, especially to go out and get it naturally yourself. So I think it tends to be, from what I understand, and I do this myself. Again, UK column doesn't say anything one way or the other about what people should do, but it's just been my experience and research and advice from nutritionists and homeopaths and people that I've spoken to that we should all be supplementing in the winter, regardless of what is or isn't going around, because it just helps us stay healthier, generally speaking.
Well,
So,
I'd like to comment on that. I think that's certainly so. One of the things that Dr. Grimes has talked about in his interviews with Dr. Campbell is that as you get older, you don't produce the vitamin D so well. So people in my age group, which is well over 70, would be well to take some vitamin D3 in the winter,
yeah,
and also to have their levels checked maybe a couple of times a year to see how they're getting on.
right.
So I think that was very good advice. So we've got doctors who are saying sensible things to us, and it's good to know that these people are out there. But unfortunately, these are fellows who are probably, in their 70s, 80s, or even mid 80s. I'm not quite sure how old.
Yeah, and it was, of course, your age group that was advised to get as many jabs as possible because you were considered to be at higher risk according to the NHS, right? So we were seeing people getting jabbed 8 times because they were in your age group, thinking that you were supposed to be the most protected or the most, whatever, which is highly unfortunate for everyone involved. Because the message for the children was, of course, don't kill Granny. And meanwhile, Granny's getting 8 jabs, right? So what's going on?
Well, this is one of the things I looked at fairly carefully. Early on, I looked at figures from John Ioannidis,
Yeah.
and these figures were later confirmed by the Stanford University. He's supposedly a world famous epidemiologist. I didn't quite know who to look at other than people like that, but they're all showing that really you had virtually no risk of dying of the disease if you were under, say, 60 or 65, unless you had a lot of comorbidities. And even the risk in my age group, which was 75 plus or so, I think they were saying that if you got the original type, that is, and not the later Omicron version, we hadn't got to that stage at that point, then the risks were really, even, say, living on your own, say, 3 out of 100 might be very badly affected. But of course, it didn't take into consideration what methods of mitigation you might be using to improve your health.
Right. Well, and I think something that some people are aware of, but it cannot be repeated enough, in my opinion, was that the government actually downgraded so-called COVID to a non-high consequential disease and then locked us up a couple of days after that. And I think that's a very key point in the story, that we all need to remember that they never considered anything to be a deadly virus from the beginning. And then, of course, everyone was so scared at the time that we were watching the films coming in from Wuhan and people literally falling on their backs on the streets, waiting for direction from the directors. Okay, what do I do after I've fallen over, right? And so this was supposed to have been terrifying us, but this is what we were told, and it was all of the fear campaign that Brian Garish and Mike Robinson were covering so well at the time, about the psychological manipulation, about the fear control, which I've spoke about as well at the Scottish People's COVID Inquiry, about the fear campaign. The media campaign was so important to all of this. And, I can't help but think, going back to the safety of these mRNA injections, that maybe this was all part of the setup to make us all line up and get the things. Because, if you think about it, it wasn't our doctors that were saying to go get these things. It was the government. And they were the ones that had the contracts with the Pfizer and the Moderna and all the companies pushing this out, right? So it was not an individual decision to say, go talk to your GP and see if you should get this. It was Boris Johnson or Nicola Sturgeon going on the telly every night saying, go line up and get these things. No questions asked, everyone needs it. So
Well, that's right. That's obviously was a great big disappointment that the coercing of the doctors, which of course is something that happened in Nazi Germany with their psychologists before the Second World War. You know, when they were writing off children and killing them off, basically anyone who was defective and was being killed.
Yeah.
And this is a very worrying consequence of this very centralized system that we've got here. You know, having been married to a doctor and seeing what they go through, I do, you know, I do have a lot of sympathy for their position, because if they really spoke out about what was going on, they were going to lose their license. So this is the most terrible situation.
Well, I will share with my GP that I had at the time. I was still living in Glasgow and at the time, and my GP told me not to get them because I had had a previous incident of having a DVT, a blood clot in my leg that was caused by a different medication about 7 years before that. And once you've had one, you're at higher risk of getting another one. So the first time I heard, even I think it was just a tiny little snippet on the BBC where they said, "Oh, there's just this tiniest risk of this one type of jab and a blood clot." And immediately I thought, okay, I need to ask about this because I already know that I'm at higher risk. And so I called my GP, and he said to me, "Well, you're at higher risk of dying from a blood clot than you are of any respiratory illness. So don't get them." So I think the problem, I don't know if all GPs were that honest. I was really lucky to have that support.
I think you were lucky, yes.
But, if more GPs had really considered what they were doing, and the other question is, were people actually going to their GPs for advice? Because letters were showing up through people's post boxes, right? And just saying, "Here's your appointment, go get it." Or here's a van we've set up, or here's a vaccination center in the local retail park, go get it. And people were just lining up without questioning or saying, why am I doing this? Why have they even talked to get some medical advice about, do I need this? I'm 30 years old and completely healthy, right? So, but I think all of that goes back again to the science not being in place and nobody even questioning whether it was in place. And then myself still being in academia at the time, all of the academics were lining up to get it, even though we were all supposed to have been highly trained researchers and apparently intelligent people, and they were all lining up.
This is very peculiar.
I know, which is why I am no longer in the system and working happily for UK Column.
Well, I wasn't in the system in a way, in that I was, beyond retirement age, still working along.
Yeah.
In a way, all those lockdowns, it did destroy my workload, which was bad, but it gave me time to study what was going on, strangely enough.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're able to do things that you weren't able to do before, and I had the same experience in a way. Obviously, I've got an active brain and was very interested in what was happening, and that's led me to where I am now, which was really 5 years of writing letters to the likes of MPs. And so
Yeah, let's go on to that a little bit. Because again, this was the part that we covered previously when I did a short interview with you a few months ago. But I do know, and again, I know you've got a lot more detail about all of the recent science, including the announcement just this past week. And what we can do for the sake of time is put some links to this in the write-up for this interview that will be on ukcolumn.org around some of the recent research saying, no, these were never safe and effective. So research is coming out. We'll just put some links into some of the peer-reviewed studies just to save our time so that viewers can take a look at that. And but also just in the recent days, it was announced across the pond in America that they have revoked the emergency use authorization of mRNA. Is that right? Because I remember you showed me an article about that.
Yes, well, that's right. I think the two articles which I thought were extremely interesting that have come out is one, the Japan study, which is so massive, like between 20 and 22 million people. They've somehow gone, they good records in Japan. They've gone and tracked down the records and so on. And then they've been able to, from this number of people, they've been able to draw out a graph and it shows that if you're unvaccinated, that the excess mortality runs along on a flat line down the base of this graph.
Right.
And then if you have been inoculated or injected, jabbed, so-called vaccinated, but it doesn't quite react, the body doesn't react quite. Excess mortality comes up in a gentle curve, reaching a peak after about 100 to 120 days, and then begins to decline after that. So that's an extraordinary result. So when it comes to the GPs, they haven't been, for instance, they were never told to look for the list of side effects which Pfizer had in their original research. So there were over 1,000 listed pages of listed research and so on.
Yeah.
In this, when that was put out, I think that was a study in the first 3 months of being put out from December 2020 through to February 2021, where you had these 1, 2, 2, 3 deaths in the Pfizer paper. And this was where this Judge Pittman in Texas, in the circuit court there, or whatever you call it in the USA, he allowed the putting out of all this data, this enormous amount of data they had on it, which has been eventually researched in the Pfizer papers by Naomi Wolf and Amy Kelly.
Right.
And there's obviously marvelous researchers behind it, over 1,000 or 2,000 people who helped write it all up.
Yeah.
Which is a vast effort. But of course they came to a completely different opinion as to what was going on than Pfizer did, or Pfizer maybe came to that conclusion but didn't actually do anything about it. So,
well, see, this is when we go back to the corruption of research, right?
Yes.
So, of course, if you have researchers working for Pfizer, and even if they did find out that there were all these horrible side effects and it was killing people, Pfizer isn't going to continue to write your paycheck. If you're going to go back and say, well, you've developed this thing that you're going to give to the whole world, but it's killing people, they don't want to hear that, right? And so this is what we go back to with this corruption of who's funding the research. Is it the Gates Foundation? Is it Pfizer? Is it Moderna? Is it, and that's where we see this problem with science. And that's when we say trust the science, like they were saying at the time. What was that, the Pfizer executive who said that it was moving at the speed of science? Do you remember that one? Speed,
yes,
whatever the speed of science is.
That was Janine Small when she was asked by Rob Roos in the European Parliament.
Yeah.
A direct question. But I would say a thing, you see, in my research is I'd already realised that because I was watching various programmes in November of 2020, that the jabs would not stop infection and transmission. They'd never been tested for that, and they didn't.
No.
Because everyone has had this disease. I mean, look at poor old Biden. He's probably had the disease, goodness knows how many times. Is it 3 or 4?
Whatever it's convenient for Biden is when Biden has had the disease. That's what I think. So we've got all this research. You've done all this reading, even back then at that time. And so you decided to start doing something. So what did you start to do?
Could I? Yes, I will. If I can move on to that when I finish this thing. The thing is
sorry.
that the Amy Kelly
Yes.
and Naomi Wolf came up with it, that the jabs were particularly damaging to women and their fertility.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a second big thing that's come out. And now we've got Vibeke Manneke, who's put out a lot of good. She's a Danish researcher. She's put out a lot of stuff early on. And she's showing, by look at the gold standard Czech data, because there are only a few places in the world where we get the proper level record data out, and this level record data has really shown that fertility in women who've taken the jabs has probably gone down by about a third. So we're going to have a population collapse. While all these people are pouring into the country at one end,
right,
our own populations are collapsing.
Well, it's part of the plan. It's the replacement migration, UN policy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, sorry, now we're going to move on to the next bit.
No, it's, So moving on at the speed of science to the next point. I just wanted to hear from you a little bit about your experiences and what you were doing. I know you were doing FOIs, you were writing to your MP. And this is what we touched on briefly in our first interview. So I think what I would like to hear from you is kind of some of the things that you did and what happened when you did these things.
Yes, well, early on, that was 9th of January, was it 9th of December 2020 was when I started to get so frustrated with what was going on that I wrote my first letter to the MP. Now, I'm not a person who really wants to write to the MP. I've had help from a previous Tory MP from Hexham. I had maybe an exchange of 1 or 2 letters with the Hexham MP, Guy Opperman, many years, maybe a decade before. So anyway, the first letter I put out, I'll just get the title of it here. Let's get this.
I think I've got it here as well.
9th of December 2020, I first wrote to the MP Guy Opperman about the 14th December 2020 debate, reject any restrictions on those who refuse the COVID-19 vaccination. I was already aware that the injections did not stop infection and transmission in November 2020. So then I went on, I didn't really hear back from him, but he sent that letter to Nadim Zahawi, the Minister for COVID vaccine deployment. And I on the 28th of March, I wrote to the Cabinet Office stating that injections do not stop infection and transmission, because they were asking for feedback from the people, and they got it from me. Quite a decent letter. I'm always polite in how I write my letters generally. I consider it to be polite.
Yeah.
I'm a man from the North Country, and we do like to call a spade a bloody shovel.
Good for you.
So, anyway, I informed on 6th of April 21, I informed Guy Opperman of the 28th March information that the injections did not stop infection and transmission, and requested attendance in his surgery. I expressed concerns about the influence of the WEF.
Of course.
Because I was very well aware of them rumbling around in the background and so on. And so that went on. So on 22nd of April, I got a letter from Nadim Zahawi, which made various claims. And I thought about these various claims and so on. And that caused me to write to Nadim Zahawi a notice, not a letter, because a notice is a very useful piece of that we can use, a very useful thing we can use, and really stating his claims and asking him to provide proof of his claims, because so many people are making ridiculous claims all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not making claims all the time. I'm very careful not to make outrageous claims, but I think there's a maxim in law that says, he who makes a claim is, I won't have it quite right this, but it's basically it's up to him to provide proof of that claim. It's not up to me to bow down to the likes of Nadim Zahawi. I don't know what the hell he knows. He probably knows less than I do.
Probably. Yeah.
So we got into this situation with our parliamentarians now. That they think they're in charge of us, whereas in fact they are there to represent us, whatever that quite means, represent us. But it's not working very well at the moment.
No. So we went through that. We went through basically you got kind of ignored, didn't you?
Well, I got ignored and so on, and let's see what I can find here, what I actually wrote to Nadim, because I did ask various important things of him. I mean, this has been a complex business trying to get through it. Here it is. Now, he says, these are his claims. His paragraph 3, we have now accepted the recommendations from the Independent Medicine and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, to authorise 3 COVID-19 vaccines for use, including Pfizer, BioNTech, Oxford, AstraZeneca, and Moderna. This follows months of rigorous clinical trials and a thorough analysis of the data.
Months, isn't it usually something like 10 years to develop a new medication?
Yes, exactly. So this is immediately the claim is farcical. Who have concluded that all 3 vaccines met the regulators' strict standards of safety, quality, and effectiveness. Well, you don't need to be a medical expert to see this is ridiculous. So, number 2 claim, your paragraph 4, the current UK operates a system of informed consent for vaccinations. Our objective is to vaccinate as many people as possible. Well, at least he's saying something truthfully there. In line with the advice of the Joint Committee on Vaccinations and Immunisations, we will continue to provide clear information to the public, encouraging people to seek NHS's advice so that they have the right information to make an informed choice. Well, what the hell do the NHS know after the thing has never been tested? I mean, the whole thing is a farce.
Oh, yeah.
It's a farce. Please provide the this is me speaking. Please provide the documentation by the experts of the MHRA concluding that all 3 vaccines met the regulator's strict standards of safety, quality, and effectiveness. Please provide these standards and the test results showing that these products meet these standards. So that was quite I would probably have 1 million pages, but it might not have said much. Please provide the documentation that prior to vaccination that each vaccine recipient receives the information to make an informed consent. And this is dated 21st of August 2021, and all of these are present. Number 1, the vaccine insert. 2, the contents of the vaccine to be used. 3, how it works. 4, that there is no liability clause in the vaccination agreement. I mean, if you're wanting to vaccinate, so-called vaccinate the whole population, they need a little bit of reassurance. This peculiar thing called informed consent.
That went out the window.
And the operation of this even more peculiar thing called a precautionary principle. That the vaccine manufacturers do not claim their products stop infection or transmission, and the public are now informed of the resulting breakthrough cases, which we could see in the official data actually, but that the manufacturer or the person carrying out the injection, doctor, nurses and others, do not carry any liability whatsoever for damage to individuals. That they are informed that before commencement of the vaccination programme that no studies were carried out on animals, pregnant women, children, people with comorbidities and the elderly, that's me. That they are informed of all possible side effects so far identified, including death, micro and macro blood clotting in many parts of the body, causing heart attacks, strokes, lungs problems, myocarditis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, Bell's palsy, and other side effects identified to date. That they're informed that these products use experimental technology where there have been no long-term safety studies that might identify all possible side effects. These include studies of toxicity, pharmacokinetics, brackets, to what part of the body do the injected materials spread, and pharmacodynamics, what does the injected material do when it gets there. That they are now informed that these products, injected gene therapy treatments, have produced more adverse reactions worldwide than any other recent vaccination program, because all this had come out. I mean, we'd had a safety signal basically in January or February from the VAERS system, the American Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, in that time, that far more people were dying than had ever died in the previous years since they started this system. Was it 1986 or what?
And there was the same in the UK with the yellow card system, and UK Column actually had a searchable database online where people could actually go in and look at what was coming in through the yellow card system that had been facilitated by UK Column at the time. It was the same kind of thing that was coming through the VAERS system. And so, of course, this would have been everywhere. But again, safe and effective was the line they continued, wasn't it?
Well, we had Eudrovigilance and various other systems as well, so
Yeah,
which were in the background. that due to the accelerated release of the experimental products, there are no long-term studies of suspected side effects such as genetic damage, autoimmune disease, cancer, sterility in men and women, antibody-dependent enhancement, and other as yet unknown damage. Because at that time we didn't quite know, but we suspected there were people telling us who were from the drug industry, pharmaceutical industry, were telling us that these things could occur, that the risk of death for anyone under the age of 60 from COVID-19 is minuscule, that there are several published early home treatment protocols which became known as early as April 2020. It is reported they can reduce hospitalization and death by up to 85%, which for people under over 60 who become infected can produce robust natural immunity. So then I said, please provide a sworn affidavit supporting your above claims in 1 and 2 numbered above. These are the claims by, so are we backed by your commercial liability of a minimum of £2 million? Because, if the government's going to tell everyone to go out and get these things, surely someone in the government can swear an affidavit that these things are true, that we're being told that it's safe and effective. I mean, obviously they didn't swear an affidavit.
No.
Which was
sure.
So then I say, please supply your reply to this notice within 14 days of the above date. Failure to reply will mean that I will conclude that you agree with me. A, that you have no documentation supporting your above claims. B, that all 3 vaccines fail to meet the regulator's strict standards of safety, quality and effectiveness. C, that the public has not been informed concerning the risks involved and unable to make an informed consent. D, that so-called vaccination is generally by coercion. E, that you are spreading false information. F, that you should, as Minister responsible in Parliament, forthwith shut down the government's so-called vaccination programme. I enclose a copy of your letter of 22nd of April 2020 for your records. This contains your claims. So I thought that was pretty crushing for him, but of course he wouldn't reply.
Of course. Right.
And I've gone on subsequent that to really everything was followed up from that initial submission. So, I kept after this. I kept after the local MP. I sent the information to him during the year and followed up because he didn't respond. I mean, he's a barrister. He must be used to looking at evidence, or was. He's no longer the MP now. Looking at evidence, but I could see immediately that he didn't want to look at anything. So it was very like with, when Andrew Bridgen spoke in the Parliament, and obviously he was the only man who probably there who actually had a degree in biological science.
Yes.
And could speak with authority on the subject.
And he was mostly speaking to empty rooms when he was speaking. Nobody stayed to listen to him. Maybe 2 people in the room, and some of the coverage that I saw when he was speaking up.
Well, that's right. He had a little bit of support from the likes of Christopher Chope and some of the ladies, but generally speaking, they all kept away.
Yeah.
Now, he'd done a lot of good work before, obviously exposing the post office scandal. And when the films were made of the post office scandal, he never even got a mention. Why was that? That's extraordinary, because he did very good work for those sub-postmasters and mistresses and so on, something that people don't even realise because they cut him out of the narrative. So, yes, I continued following after Mr. Opperman, Guy Opperman, our local MP, and I tried to set up a meeting with him before I wrote this letter. I've always tried, the whole of my career has been, a lot of it's been about negotiation, talking to people, trying to come to an amicable conclusion with people. And so I wanted to meet him face to face and see what he was about. But he wouldn't do so. So this is very frustrating for any individual to withstand. When you had a leading career as an architect in the locality, in the northeast of England. I've worked for some of the most famous architects. I've had a very interesting career, you could say.
And what happened? Did he just ignore you? Did he write back to you?
Well, he would write back, but he would not really. He wouldn't meet me. He said he was too busy to meet me. And I said, well, because he had so many important issues, but this was a very important issue when you're trying to ram a needle into everyone's arm.
Quite important, yeah.
Quite important, and it could potentially kill some people. Obviously, people were dying of it. And as this recent Japanese study of 22 million people shows, people did die, and they didn't die when you thought they would die. You know, some people died on the same day as they took a jab.
Right.
Some people died the next few days, you know, fulfilling the Bradford Hill criteria for cause of death. You know, there's always talk about causality and so on. And but actually the death is occurring, the maximum death is occurring this 100 to 120 days later. And obviously the medical profession were not taught to look for this. So that's been a disgraceful aspect to this technology they've tried to force on us. So
I will say, just in the interest of time, you've given me quite a very detailed look at what you did over sort of these few years from 2021 onward. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all of it today, but I will sort of write a summary of some of this that I'll put in the write-up for the interview, just so people can see exactly how much work you put into it and coming to it from different directions. But I think overall, the point is that you were just ignored.
I was ignored.
Despite all this work.
We were so ignored that we went outside, and we, the people northeast, we actually, some of my later letters, I read them out outside the MP's office. His assistant wouldn't come out and see me. This is after another MP got stabbed and killed, which was obviously, we're very sorry about that.
Right.
But the fact that he wouldn't meet me was very bad. So I then put in 2 notices to him in early 2022 for potential malfeasance in public office. Because by this time I was very frustrated with the goings on and thought this is not at all correct and so on. And I'm submitting very good evidence to him. I'm not making a lot of claims. I'm just saying this is what's going on elsewhere. Would you have a proper look at this? And please, would you change your mind and, come to reality, please?
It didn't happen, did it?
So, yes, that's gone on, and it's went on right until 2024 when I put in my final notice. I sent 3 notices to him or more.
Yeah, we've got here, so I know some of this as well, we can point people to the We the People Northeast channel, because I know you've had some things on there as well, which of course we can send the audience there. And so we kind of go into investigation of crime, the 10th of May, 2024. I thought that was an important point.
Well, the thing is, I put all this time in, and I did put him in a time schedule, and I was moving towards that, putting him a letter before claim into him. Unfortunately, I fell ill at that time. I don't know how much this has knocked me back. I mean, obviously, of a decent age and could be ill anyway. But anyway, I was moving towards taking a legal action against him. And I don't know whether he's had a lucky escape or I've had a lucky escape.
Well,
because the thing is, how well protected are these MPs for not actually? It's a point of great interest to me is how well are they protected? I mean, it's very important that MPs can stand up in Parliament and speak without fear or favour. This was a point made to me. My father-in-law's good friend from number 17 Squadron, who was a top. He was the only English partner of Arthur Young's for very, very many years, the big accountant and so on. And he always said this was vital that the MP should be able to stand up in Parliament without fear or favour and say what they thought. And now we seem to have got a situation in the Parliament where there's a lot of skullduggery going on with the whips, and you've got the likes of Bill Gates coming in. Every time we get a new Prime Minister, he arrives
Yeah.
What is it? I'm asking the question, what is he offering? Why is there no transparency in all of this? I mean, we're a
Well,
sovereign nation, and we should have some knowledge of what he's talking about. If he's offering a lot of money,
yeah.
which he
that's what it
has,
is.
he gave, say, a few hundred million in 2022 to the likes of Imperial College. He gave to Oxford. He's giving to Seppi and Gavi and all these other people. Well, what's he expecting in return for all of this? I mean, I may have my figures slightly wrong here. I'm just going off memory now.
Yeah.
And if I have, I do apologise.
No, there's a lot of evidence of that, and I can refer viewers to my interview with Gloria Moss on funding for universities and kind of how that has, again, as we said earlier, taken over. Who's doing what? Who's paying for what? So, what did you learn from all of this, all of these years of correspondence and standing up? What was your big? Do you have a takeaway from any of this?
The takeaway would be that, in a way, it seemed rather worthless, but I had a quote there from Gandhi. I want to say to everyone, shall I look at it and get it exactly, the quote?
Yeah, I've got it here somewhere, I believe.
I think it says that people will, or somehow will be made out that what you're doing is useless. Everything that you do will be seen as insignificant, but do it anyway.
Yeah, might as well.
So I followed that. I mean, I'm not a tremendous follower of Gandhi, I have to say, but then it also said, it is beneath human dignity to lose one's individuality, but to become a mere cog in the machine. And then Martin Luther King, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And I say a little prayer here. I ask and pray, this is from a friend of mine, I ask and pray that I more and more align myself with the objective universe and set aside my own distortions of reality. So, as an ordinary person from the northeast of England, this is what I've been trying to do, I think, yes.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we can go on to as well, if you're happy to do that, is, something that we talk about frequently on UK Column is people ask us, what can we do? Right. And so our job as a news organization is not to tell people what to do, but it's certainly our job to get the word out from people who have done things and give ideas and inspiration. So do you have anything that maybe can inspire someone who's is becoming aware, has been aware of what's going on in all of the different ways that they're trying to do things to us? I mean, what advice would you give to them?
Well, I mean, working in the architectural profession all these years, I've sometimes, you put a lot of pressure onto planners or people, neighbours or whatever it is, and you don't always get the result you think you're going to get, but you do get sometimes a result you don't expect.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you need to keep the pressure up on the people who are supposedly, in the government. I think, we did have some results in that we went out in groups to challenge, for instance, when they started to want to jab people under the age of 12, and we did have some success there. I mean, I don't think, I think our resistance has had some effect, yes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, we could have all been living under vaccine passports and digital IDs already if those of us who did stand up hadn't done something. If we had all just 100% complied, I think they would have been a lot further along than they are now. And one bit of hope that I like to give to people, the work that I've been doing looking at sustainable development goals in the United Nations Agenda 2030, and Sandy Adams has done a lot of work on this, obviously, who's also one of the UK column presenters, is that they're not very far along to where they want to be. They're actually behind, very badly behind on Agenda 2030 and the sustainable development goals. And I would like to think that those of us who are standing up and taking action and doing things and informing people are making a difference, because if you look at it, they're actually starting to panic a little bit that they only have 5 years to get to where they need to be and they're nowhere near where they want to be by now. So the more of us though that are starting to stand up, do things, write to your MP, do freedom of information requests, do read things out loud, whatever it is that we can do. I think the more we stand up, the less they're going to be to where they want us to be and find some of the best news possible. Now, on that, I just want to say, because unfortunately we're about out of time here, normally the last thing I do when I interview someone is I ask if there is anything else that they would like to share. But in your case, I think I will end a little bit differently because I understand that you're going to have a song for us today. And I'm ready to be sang to after discussing all of this important information.
So we're going to have...
You said you're going to have a song for us that you're going to sing.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, exactly, a song. Yes, I do like singing. Well, I think people used to enjoy listening to me. But where have I put it?
I've got it here. Is that it?
I used to be a folk singer.
Really?
Yes, and I performed at the Newcastle City Hall and all over the place years ago, but I haven't got my guitar.
We'll do a cappella, it's fine.
But anyway,
all right.
Ode to Fauci.
Ode to Fauci.
You're a very good friend.
Yeah.
And mine. If you knew Fauci like I know Fauci, oh, 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 what a guy. He's so entrancing, he'll have you dancing. Oh, 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 what a guy. You may be prancing at the thought of his dancing. Oh, 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 what a guy. He is the science upon which we have reliance. Oh, 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 what a guy. He'll have you injecting with jabs overdosing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and more. He's destroyed his science upon which there's no reliance. Oh, 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 what a guy. But after dosing, you could be morosing. Oh, 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 what a guy.
Thank you. Well, I can't think of a better place to leave this discussion. So again, I want to thank the audience for the time today. Again, this is Diane Rasmussen with UK Column up in the northeast of England. I've been talking with Mr. Tim Coulter today, and it's been a fascinating discussion, and I hope everyone enjoys it as well. So thank you again for joining us, and I will be signing off from here. Thank you all for watching.